योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिम् गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः हरिः ओम. So we are in the middle of the bhashya of Sutra 3.17. The sutra is śabdārthapratyayānāmitaretarādhyāsāt sankarah tat pravibhaga sanyamat sarvabhūtarutagñānam. So the sutra says that the confusion between the shabda, which is the word that the sound carrying word that generates the meaning, the shabda, artha, the actual object which is denoted by the shabda, and the pratyaya, the cognitive imprint, the knowledge. These three, there is a intermixing, there is a confusion of these three. And when the yogi does sanyama, which as we saw is a technical term referring to the dharana, dhyana, samadhi combination. When he does the sanyama on the distinction between these three, which is known as pravibhaga, then the siddhi from that is sarva bhuta ruta jnanam. The yogi gains knowledge of or the power to understand the communication of all kinds of beings. So that is what this sutra was. And then we looked at part of the bhashya in detail, looking at what is speech, what is vak, what is dhvani, what is shabda, then how is the relation between the shabda and the artha. How does that come about? The word and the meaning, so to speak. And we were at a point where the notion of sanketa and sanketa buddhi was being discussed. Now, we continue from where we left off. So the next statement in Vyasa's bhashya is as follows. Sanketastu padapadarthayoho iteretaraadhyasa rupaha smrityatmakah yoyam shabdah soyam arthah yo arthah sa shabdah iti. So now that this notion of sanketa, which it was said, sanketa is that correspondence between word and meaning, which has come about because, as it was said, anadi vag vyavahara vasanānuvidhya lokabuddhya. So in this world, in this society, from time immemorial, there is a usage of speech which has generated a certain vasana among the people, among the society, so that a certain word generates a certain meaning in the mind of the hearer. So that correspondence was sanketa. And now he says sanketastu, this sanketa, padapadarthayoho itaretara rupaha. So it is being brought to our notice that this sanketa it causes a certain equivalence, a certain mixing between the pada and the padartha. So pada means the term, the word, the denoter. Padartha means the actual thing, the meaning, the denotee. So this Sanketa is for them of in relation to these two, it is a itaretarādhyāsa rūpaha. It is of the nature of bringing a mutual mixing, a mutual equivalence, a mutual correspondence between the word and the thing, the word and the meaning. So it is of that nature. Itaretarādhyāsa rūpaha means anyonya abhinnākārah. So mutually, as though they are the same, they are equivalent. It is of the nature of bringing that about. It meaning the Sanketa. Smrityatmakaha. It resides in the smriti. It resides in the individual memory. It resides in the collective memory. Of what nature? That is being illustrated. It says, Yoyam shabdaha soyam arthaha. Yo arthaha sa shabdaha. It says, what this word is, it is that thing. What that thing is, it is that word. Soon an example will be given where we will understand that. But in a general sense, this Sanketa can be described as Yoyam shabdaha soyam arthaha yo arthaha sa shabdaha. Whatever this word, that is that thing or meaning. Whatever is that thing, that is this word. And so on. Evam itaretarādhyāsa rūpaha sanketaha bhavati iti. So it says this is how of this nature. Yoyam shabdaha soyam artha yo artha sa shabdaha. It is of this nature that there is a itara mutual mixing, a mutual equivalence, and that is this nature of this sanketa. Evam ete śabdārthapratyayāh itaretarādhyāsāt sankirnaha. Further Vyasa extends this. He says, Evam, similarly, ete, these, śabdārthapratyayāh. Now, in addition to Shabda and Artha, Vyasa is adding Pratyaya, which was there in the Sutra as well. So now that through the concept of Sanketa, we can understand the correspondence between the Shabda and the thing, the word and the meaning, the denoter and the denotee. Similarly, the Shabda, the word, the term, the denoter, Artha, the thing in the real world, the denotee, the meaning, and the Pratyaya, the knowledge of it, the cognitive imprint of it in the Buddhi. That is known as the Pratyaya. All these three, itaretarādhyāsāt, due to the mutual mixing, mutual confusion or mutual equivalence of these three, they are sankirnaha. They are mixed, they are confused, as though they are the same, as though they are equivalent. Now the example is given. Gauriti shabdo, gaurityartho, gauriti jnanam. So this is an example. So gauhu is a word. So it refers to a, let's say a cow. So gauhu means cow. So gauhu iti shabdaha. So gau is a word, it is a term on hearing which the meaning of the cow gets generated in the listener's brain. Or this meaning, because it's in the speaker's brain, it generates that word. So it is the denoter, gauhu. Now gauhu iti arthaha. The actual cow is also gauhu. So if you look at the real cow and you say, well, what is it? Someone will say gauhu. But in this case, it is the cow, the thing, that is the gauhu. But it is treated as though the gau shabda, the word, the gau artha, both of them are called gauhu. So there is a certain mixing, there is a certain equivalence. Similarly, gauriti jnanam. So when we talk about the cow, when we think about the cow, or when we hear the word gauhu, or we look at the cow, the cognitive imprint, if we say, what is it in your mind, we say gauhu. So the thing in the real world is gauhu. The thing being spoken and communicated is gauhu. The thing in the brain, in the nature of the pratyaya or the knowledge or cognitive imprint is also gauhu. So this is the example of a itaretarādhyāsa. There is a mutual equivalence which causes a confusion, as though these three distinct entities and their nature or these three distinct concepts are not properly understood and they all get mixed together. So, evamete śabdārthapratyaya itaretarādhyāsāt sankirnaha gauriti shabdo gauriti artho gauriti jnanam. And then Ya esham pravibhagagnyah sa sarvavit, says Vyasa. The one who understands the distinction between these three aspects, the Shabda, the Artha, and the Pratyaya, so he is known as a Pravibhagagnyah. Pravibhagam janati iti Pravibhagagnyah. One who knows the distinction between these three aspects, he says Sasarvavit. Sasarvavit means he knows everything. In the context of the sutra, it can be understood that he is a Sarva Bhuta Ritagnyah. He gets the understanding of the language of each and every type of being.
So, it's quite an interesting sutra, and I would request you to recall similar discussion which took place while we were dealing with Samapatti. Shabdārtha vikalpaihi sankirinaha. Shabda Artha Jnana. Now, these are very intriguing aspects. Like you just now heard, there are three cows in the example just now discussed, the Gauhu. There are three cows in the example. One is Gauhu iti Shabdaha, then Gauhu iti Arthaha, and Gauhu iti Pratyaya. Gauhu Jnanam. So, now there is that sanketa or convention in every language that a word would mean a corresponding object. This convention is set in all languages. Why water means water, there is no logic. The water, by convention, is taken to denote that particular substance, liquid substance. And that's a convention. Why cow is called cow, tiger is called tiger, water is called water, fire is called fire, air is called air. The word and its meaning, the correspondence there, it is sanketa, it is sanketika buddhi. It is convention set from time immemorial in a language. And that is in everybody's vasana, everybody's psychic consciousness, having that impression that this word means, it means this. So in example, the cow is a word. And the cow word refers to the denotee, the particular cattle. That is called cow. And we also have the knowledge of cow, wherefore we are able to identify that cattle and call it cow. So, the Shabda, Artha, Jnana are all the three are cows, as you just now heard in the example given by Srineet. And if you recall, I had said earlier, if I utter the word cow and if I say, what did I say? Your answer is cow. If I point out at cattle grazing on the field and I ask you, what is that? Your answer is cow. And looking at the cow, if I ask you, what is in your mind? You say, it is cow. So the Shabda, Artha and Pratyaya, or Shabda, Artha, Jnana, they are all one and the same, cow. And here we can see that there is Adhyasa, Paraspar Aropa, mutual imposition. Now, actually these are three different things. One is a phonic cow. It is Shabda Swarupa. It is Dhvani Parinama. It is sound form. The cow, the word, is sound form. Now this word cow doesn't have characteristics of the cattle cow, such as skin, flesh, muscles, bones, tissues, blood, etc., etc. It is purely a word. That is Dhvani Parinama. It is sound modulation, sound modification, or a phonetic form. The Artha cow, the actual cow, is made up of flesh. That cow has skin, flesh, muscles, bones, tissues, organs, blood, etc., etc. And the jnana that we have the impression in our mind about the cow, which we recognize by somebody uttering the word or somebody or looking at the object, we have the cow jnana triggered within us. Now that cow doesn't have the matter of the physical cow. So these three are three different cows. One is phonetic, the other one is objective of body matter, and the third one is only illumination in our knowledge. Pratyaya is illuminative form. It is prakashatmaka. So these are three cows, śabdārtmaka, vastuatmaka, and the prakashatmaka. Now these three cows are totally different. Their material is different. As you heard just now, one is shabda, dhvani, sound. Other one is matter, cow matter. And the third one is imprint in our mind, which is prakasha rupa. So the material of all the three cows are different, but yet there is mutual imposition. There is a mix-up. Sankirnaha, there is a mix-up. So this is what happens to Laukika Buddhi. But for a yogi, it is possible to have pravibhaga. And this distinction is based on what I just now divulged: phonetic form, physical form, and impression form within the mind. So that the pravibhaga makes him have the sarva bhuta ruta jnanam, that is sarvavit. Has knowledge of every animal's language. Only let me tell you by the by here, incidentally, that it is said to be sarva bhuta ruta jnanam. All animals. Human being is excluded here. Human being is excluded here. So yogi will not know the language of human being based on what is said in the sutra. Because human being will have ingenuine condition. The animal world, they have complete genuinity. They do not pretend. They do not deceive. What is in their mind, that mind, like animal will say, cow will be making a sound because it is happy, because it is delighted, because it is sorrowed. For any reason, it will make the same sound. And we just say that's the sound of a particular cat or a particular animal. Roar of a lion, roar of a tiger, etc. But they have to communicate something. They communicate something from their voice, which only their world understands. Lions' language is understood by lions, elephants by elephants, tigers' language by tigers. But human being will have one thing in the mind, and therefore and something else in the sound. So sarva bhuta ruta jnanam. In case of human being, yogi will understand by reading the mind of that person. So that will come later in siddhis. So with reference to animal world, there is compatibility between their intent behind sound and the sound. There is complete fidelity. They don't try to deceive. It is human mind which has this deception and deceptivity. And therefore, yogi is able to understand the language because behind their sound, they will have their mind reflecting, and there would be no discord, there would be no deceive, there would be no deception, and therefore yogi is able to understand the language of various creatures. When it comes to mankind, suppose somebody is talking French language, yogi doesn't know French language, the yogi will be able to understand what the person is meaning to say by reading the mind straight away. But for in case of animals, it is Sarva Bhuta Ruta Jnanam, Shabda Jnanam of all animals, birds, creatures, insects, worms, etc. So they will speak what they have in their mind. Whereas human beings are having this kind of dubious distinction, therefore there is a Shanti mantra. And in the practice of yoga, for Satya Pratishtha, Vang me manase pratishtita, mano me vachi pratishthitam. Let my mind be established in speech. Let the speech be established in mind. And this is what human beings need to have it as a virtue. Whereas the animals and creatures, they are absolutely genuine in their sounds. And therefore, Sarva Bhuta Jnanam. And here, Shabda Artha Jnana is the basis to understand their language. So that's another thing, incidentally, which I wanted to convey. So let's see how Vyasa is going to describe the three padarthas distinct. Okay.
Yeah. Just one clarification. So the Shabda Rasa used here is for the language, the communication through sound. This is different from the word Ritam, which refers to Satya. Okay, the way it is written, the Ritam is the R of the Rishi, whereas here Ruta is the Ru with the Rakara and the Ukara. So it is Ritam. So these are completely two different words. And the illustration just given of the human beings' language, the animals' language, etc., that is to bring about the point that in the case of human beings, one may say something while having something else in the mind. Okay, and therefore the other siddhi, which captures the state of mind, which or the complete understanding of another chitta, which will come later. However, the ability to understand the correspondence between sound and meaning does pertain to all languages, all kinds of beings, which includes, purely from the sound to meaning correspondence, it includes all creatures, animals, human beings, also devas and gandharvas, and etc., the other sort of otherworldly beings referred to in the Puranas and the Shastras, though not seen by us on, so to speak, the earth today. Okay. Now to continue, Vyasa says, Sarvapadeshu cha asti vakya shaktihi. So now there is further explanation of the nature of language. As we had seen or as we had discussed, the Vibhuti-pada is very fascinating in that different sanyamas are given, and why it is given is also was described in the preamble to 2.16, where Vyasa had said, Ato yoginaha upatta sarva sadhanasya bubhutsita artha pratipattaye sanyamasya vishaya upakshipyate. So why is all this being explained? It was said that a yogi who has accomplished all the sadhans, all the means, and has a wish to know the complete meaning of different things, how should that yogi know that? And that is why the different sanyamas available have been described, starting from the sutra given, 3.16, it was said. So all of these sanyamas are being described because it is understood and assumed that any yogi who has attained a certain state where he has accomplished all the means of the Ashtangas, he has a desire to know, bubhutsa, and how to then know different things is being described. Now, as part of that, in this text, various other allied siddhantas, like here the siddhanta of Shabda, etc., are also being described. So now, because as we had discussed in a previous session, look at the very object of Sanyama. Sanyama is not done as often is said in meditation, like, oh, you can have a lotus, you can have a pot, you can have a devata, and so on. It is, in some sense, a more simplified notion. Here, abstract concepts, deep subjects are being brought out as the object of Sanyama for a yogi. And as part of that, the subject is also explained to some degree as can fit in the text of a certain size. So now Vyasa is continuing with, like it was said, a mini Shabdanuशासनम, an introduction to this subject. So Vyasa says, Sarvapadeshu chasti vakya shakti. Each and every term has the ability to bring out the meaning of a sentence. So Sarvapadeshu, in each and every word and term, asti, there is a vakya shakti, the potential of a completed sentence, conveying the meaning of a completed sentence. And in the previous session, we had seen what is a vakya with some examples from another text called Tarka Sangraha. So he says, Vyasa, vriksha ityukte asti iti gamyate. So when somebody says vrikshaha, vriksha means a tree. So here he's saying, whenever one says tree, it is understood that somebody is saying a tree is. So asti is understood. So in Sanskrit, this is known as adhyahara. So we do an adhyahar. We fill in a term that is understood but not spoken. So if somebody says vrikshaha, if a child says, he points and or he says, okay, elephant, which means, okay, there is an elephant, he is seeing an elephant. So the child is referring to that. So vrikshaha ityukte asti iti gamyate. So if you say vrikshaha, it is understood that vrikshaha asti is being said. So the pada vriksha potentially is implying an entire sentence, which is vrikshaha asti. This is explained by in the next sentence where Vyasa says, na sattam padartho vyabhicharati iti. So any padartha sattam na vyabhicharati. Vyabhicharati means it is not, it cannot exist in absence of satta. Satta means existence. So no pada refers to something that has no existence, it says. Now this is another pretty deep notion with a lot of discussion in Nyaya Shastra, etc. about this whole notion. Okay, but at this point, let us just understand what is being said and move ahead. So it says, na sattam padartho vyabhicharati. So a pada and artha, these two, the denoter and the denotee, they do not go beyond what exists. So and there are many other things, shashashrunga, etc. That's a word that are mentioned where it refers to something that does not exist at all, horn of the hare. Then is it a valid pada and artha? And there is a lot of discussion about it. Here, it is being clearly stated or asserted that a pada and artha does not transcend what exists. So the satta is always there. Therefore, this is being said to say that whenever a vrikshaha, if that word is uttered, it is understood that the vakya is vrikshaha asti. Okay? And therefore, sarva padeshu, every pada has a vakya shakti, the potential to have a complete sentence. Now this was said with a reference to something known as a noun. Vrikshaha is a thing, it is a noun. Similarly, tatha nahi asadhana kriya asti iti. So this was with reference to a noun. Similarly with a verb, a kriya, it says nahi asadhana kriya asti. Asadhana means karakehina. Now in Vyakarana Shastra there is a notion of karakam. So the karaka is whenever there is a verb, there are certain assisting entities or related entities. So if there is a verb, there is a doer, so that is a karta, the agent. Then there is a sadhana, and some sort of a means. Sometimes there is sampradana, the purpose, what is it done for, etc. So there is a karma, the object. So there are multiple karakas. So he says, tatha nahi asadhana kriya asti. Whenever a kriya is mentioned, there is bound to be the karakas. So again an example is given. Tatha cha pachati ityukte sarvakarakanam akshepaha. So if you say pachati means cooks. Okay. So the moment the verb is uttered, saying pachati, all the other karakas are understood, even though not stated. And therefore, the word pachati, a single term, has a vakya shakti. So, when it was said sarva padeshu chasti vakya shakti, vrikshaha was given as an example as a noun, pachati is given as a verb to say that it has a complete power to denote an entire sentence. तथा च पचति इत्युक्ते सर्वकारकाणाम् आक्षेपः. Then further it is said, नियमार्थो अनुवादः कर्तृकरणकर्मणां चैत्राग्नितण्डुलानाम् इति. So further it is said, suppose the word is, the sentence is chaitraha agnina tandulam pachati. So the pachati, the word was given, it said cooks. And it is said, it implies that there is somebody doing the cooking. So that is a person called chaitraha. Then there is certain means. So that is agni, agnina, by fire. And there is something that is being cooked, which is the karma, which is the object, tandulam, which is the rice grain. So when you say pachati, it is understood that something is being cooked by someone using something. So he says, niyamartho anuvadaha. When those things are mentioned as chaitra, agni and tandulam, it is for niyamartho, means to narrow down the range of it, to make it add more specificity. So when the pachiti, the term itself was uttered, already it is understood that there is some agent, some object and some means. When the agent, object and means are specified, that is for niyamartho, to specify the general term pachati, the cooks, has been made more specific by saying who cooks what through what. So that is niyamartho. Even if those three things were not mentioned, it is not as though there was no agent understood and there was no object understood. It was always understood, but it is only the specificity. So that is known as niyamartham. So only for adding the specificity, the other karakas are mentioned. So this is one aspect of understanding that Vyasa wanted to explain. He says, Sarva Padeshu Chasti Vakya Shakti. Each and every term by itself implies an entire sentence. Then further he says, Drishtam cha Vakyarthe Padarachanam. Okay. So now there is also the other aspect that the one pada, one term, actually means an entire sentence itself. And there are certain things that are very special and very nicely done in Sanskritam. But Drishtam cha Vakyarthe Padarachanam. Now example is given. There is a pada, the word called Shrotriyaha. So what is that? Shrotriyas Chandodhite. So one who Chandaha Adite. So Chanda means the Vedas. And one who studies the Vedas. For that there is a single term called Shrotriya. And there is a sutra by Panini that will directly say that Shrotriya means this. Okay. Shrotriyas Chandodhite. And therefore we have single terms that actually stand for the whole sentence. Instead of saying Chandodhite, there is a single word called Shrotriya. Similarly, there is another word called Jivati, means Pranan Dharayati. So the Jivati means, the translation will be lives, one who lives. But what it means an entire sentence that says Pranan Dharayati. It sustains or it holds the prana. So one that sustains and holds the prana, there is a prana sanchara happening, only then there is life and only then he lives. But you can replace the sentence prana dharayati by simply saying jivati. So that same thing is being described in different ways, saying how a word with the example of vriksha, or a word with the example of pachati, or a word with the example of shrotriya, or a word with the example of jivati, in different ways is bringing about the meaning of an entire sentence. So it is fascinating in terms of how language is studied, how Sanskritam is studied, how the whole field of Vyakaranam and the thought behind it and the correspondence to the meaning, etc., has been studied. And any yogi who is doing a Sayyama on this, it is assumed that all this knowledge already exists. This is fundamental knowledge in this entire field of Shastras. So, tatra vakye padarthabhivyaktihi tatah padam pravibhajya vyakaraniyam kriyavachakam va karakavachakam va. Now another aspect is being brought out. And another aspect is being brought out where it says, okay, in the context of any vakya, any sentence, what happens is there is a padartha abhivyakti. That is where the meaning of the terms find their full fruition. There is light shining on them, and in the vakya, the thing is completed. Entire meaning is conveyed. And in that context, he says, padam pravibhajya vyakaraniyam. So you have to understand each term by further analyzing it through the grammatical process. Padam pravibhajya vyakaraniyam. So this is very easily understandable in the context of someone who knows Sanskrit and the grammar. But the process involves understanding the constituents of a pada, how that word is being generated, how that word has been formed. And then one has to understand, it says, is it a kriyavachaka or karakavachaka? Is it referring to an action, or is it referring to a thing or a noun, etc., which is a karaka, means it is an assisting entity for an action. So in the context, in the grammatical tradition, and it is slightly different in the Nyaya tradition, but in the grammar tradition, whenever a sentence is analyzed, it begins with in the context of the sentence, it is always the kriya or the verb that finds the center place. Then in the context of the kriya, the other terms, having looked at their vibhakti, which is again, it is like a form, it is a transformation. Whatever the vibhakti is identified, and then the karaka, its role in the sentence with respect to that action is identified, and that is how the meaning is formed. So here it is said, each word has to be analyzed to see, is it a kriyavachaka, action, or karakavachaka? It is a thing that is in relation with the action and bringing out some more information about the action. So now, very nice, interesting examples are given. Anyatha bhavati ashvaha ajapayah ityevamadishu namakhyata sarupyat anirgnatam katham kriyayam karakeva vyakriyateti. So now this is going in more and more detail, but since we are studying the text, let us at least spend some time understanding it. So it was said that in a vakya, in a sentence, each term has to be looked at, analyzed with the process of the vyakaranam to see, is it a kriyavachaka, action, or karakavachaka, other term which is informing us about the action. What type is it? Then Vyasa says, Anyatha, if this is not done, what will happen? In case of certain words, and 3 examples are given, Bhavati, Ashvaha, and Ajapayaha. These are examples. If this is not done, in case of words such as these, Ityevam Adishu, Namakhyata Sarupyat, because the interpretation as a noun and the interpretation as a verb, the sound is the same. Okay, Nama Akhyata Sarupyat. Akhyata means verb. So Nama Akhyata Sarupyat, because the rupa is the same, the sound is the same, what will happen? Anirgnatam, it won't be understood. Katham kriyayam karakeva, is it in the role of an action, or is it in the role of a noun, etc.? Kriyayam karakeva vyakriyate. How to interpret this? Okay, so unless the vyakarana process is put, it won't be understood, it says. So now let us look at this example. I'll try to be very brief, but still convey what is being said. So the term bhavati, there are sort of 2 meanings. Okay, so if you say ghato bhavati, means okay, there is a pot, or that a pot has become. Okay, so that is ghato bhavati. So this is a kriya, this is a action, this is a verb called bhavati. It is known as prathama purusha ekavachanam. But there is another form which also the sound is bhavati, but it is a sambodhanam. Like the bhikshukas, they say, "Oh bhavati bhiksham dehi." So here bhavati is of a very different word. Okay, and bhavati is a sambodhanam. It is a, when you call out to someone, a lady, you say, "Oh bhavati." So bhavati means you are calling out to a lady. So these are two different. The sound is the same, but in one case it is an action, in another case it is a noun. And therefore Vyasa is saying you have to apply the Vyakarana process to understand how it is to be interpreted. The other example given was by Vyasa was Ashvaha. So again with Ashvaha, if the sentence was Ashvastvam, means what? Means you breathed. Okay, so there Ashvahatvam means, okay, you did breathing, you breathed. So that is an action. At the same time, Ashvaha, as we know, the meaning is a horse. So the sound is the same, but depending on how the grammatical analysis of the pada happens in the context of the sentence, it can be a verb, it can be a noun. The third example given was Ajapayaha. So again, the right grammatical analysis has to be done in the context of the sentence. So the sentence was Ajapayaha Shatrun. What does that mean? Means defeated the enemy. It is a what is known as a Nijantam Padam, which I had explained in the past, but essentially it did not allow the enemy to win. So defeated the enemy. Ajapayaha Shatrun. On the other hand, Aja also means a goat and Payas means milk. So if you say Ajapayaha Piba, means drink goat's milk. So the same word Ajapayaha can have different meanings. Therefore, it is being said that in the context of the sentence, one has to do the right grammatical process to find the right meaning. So this is more and more subtleties, nuances being brought about the whole Vyakarana Shastra and the language here. So now, continuing, he says, Tesham śabdārthapratyayānāmitaretarādhyāsāt pravibhāgah. In all these cases, there is a shabda, the sound and the word and the linguistic concept. Then there is a artha, the world of reality, the real things, what that word referred to. And there are pratyaya, the world in the buddhi, where the knowledge imprint has been, the knowledge imprint, the world of the knowledge imprints, or the knowledge, the cognitive imprint in the buddhi. So there is a distinction, and therefore it says śabdārthapratyayānāmitaretarādhyāsāt. So one further he says, Vyasa says, tadyatha shvetate prasadah iti kriyarthaha. Shvetaha prasadah iti karakarthaha shabdaha. So once again continuing on the kriya, action and the noun, if you say shvetate prasadah, the mansion is, shvetate means it is becoming white, means it stays white. Whereas shvetaha prasadah, it is that the mansion is white. So shvetate is a kriya, it is a action, but brings about the whiteness of the mansion. Shvetaha prasada is an adjective, karakarthaha. It also brings about the whiteness of the mansion. So kriya karakatma tadarthaha pratyayascha. So when those words they are heard, the knowledge imprint, or when they are spoken, the knowledge imprint in the buddhi, one is of the nature of kriya. So when you say shvetate, the speaker and the listener, in his mind, the knowledge imprint is of an action. Whereas when you say shvetaha, it is of the nature of a thing, or a nature of a noun, or an adjective. So it is being said that just as the word has slight variations that can bring a kriya or a karaka, the pratyaya, the cognitive imprint generated by them, are also, it says, kriya karakatma tadarthaha pratyayascha. Both the actual meaning itself, so arthaha, and the cognitive imprint, the pratyaya, also are kriya karakatma. They may be of the nature of a kriya or action or the nature of a karaka. And then kasmat so ayam iti abhisambandhat ekakara eva pratyayah sanketah iti. So why is this happening? Why is the actual meaning and the cognitive imprint both of the nature of kriya and karaka? Vyasa takes us back to the sanketa, which is so ayam. This was the sanketa. This word denotes this. Iti abhisambandhat. Because of this correspondence, ekakara of a similar nature, ekakara eva pratyayah sanketah iti. They are of the pratyaya and the sanketa are of that nature. So if the word is kriyavachaka, the pratyaya is kriyavachaka, the thing is also of the nature of the kriya. So the right from the old Vedas and Upanishads, etc., where it was said, the Paramatma says, Nama Rupam Vyakaravani. I will bring about the names and forms. So it is always names and forms. So, and in the Vakyapadiya also, where the Shabda Brahma, the Anadinidadam Brahma, that is brought about. There is this notion of just as there is the transformation in the world of language and the things or the forms of the words, the actual things are also transformed. So this goes hand in hand. The world of language and the denoters and the world of things and the denotee are undergoing transformation through the prakriti parinamas, etc. So that again, you can see it very beautifully coming here, where the different types of words are described, and that is generating that type of cognitive imprint, and also that is also the padartha, artha itself, the thing in the world is also of that nature. So elsewhere it is described, sanketah upadhihi ekakara pratyayo natu tattvika ityarthah sanketa iti saptamya sanketasya nimittata darshita. So here essentially it is being said that the sanketa is what it is, like an upadhi. It is a condition which on hearing that word it is generating that cognitive imprint in the mind of the same nature. So abhisambandha ekakara eva pratyayah. So now yastu shveto arthah sa shabda pratyayoho alambani bhutah. Now let's look at this. So in one case it was said shvetate prasadah, the mansion is being white. In other case it was said shvetah prasadah, the mansion is white. So one was of the nature of an action, the other is the nature of an adjective, a thing, and it generated similar cognitive imprints in the speaker and the listener. However, yastu shvetoho arthah, the actual thing, actual mansion, it is a completely different thing from the word and the knowledge. It exists on its own. And what is it? It is a shabda pratyayoho alambani bhutah. In this case, it is the support for that description in words and the cognitive imprint. But the actual thing is just a white mansion sitting there on the ground. Sahi swabhihi avastabhihi vikriyamanaha na shabda sahagato no buddhi sahagatah. So that mansion is undergoing transformations of its own. We have seen dharma, lakshana, avastha, parinama, etc. So that mansion is sitting there. Maybe a new mansion is getting old. Maybe it has some dirt stuck to it, etc. So it is undergoing its own changes, which has nothing to do with what is happening to the word that denoted it, or what is happening to the cognitive imprint in the mind or the minds generated by those words. So the mansion is completely independent. It is undergoing its own changes. Similarly, evam shabda evam pratyayo netaretara sahagata iti anyatha shabdo anyatha artho anyatha pratyaya iti vibhagah. Similarly, the word, it manifests, it generates a certain understanding, it goes away. It is not tied in any way to the cognitive imprint or the actual mansion. It has its own transformations it may manifest, it may go away entirely independently. Similarly, the pratyaya, once the pratyaya, the cognitive imprint is generated, it has its own separate life cycle, which is not related to the life of the word itself or of the mansion itself. So all these three things, if you think about it, are very clearly entirely separate. The word is a certain thing as a denoter. The cognitive imprint in the mind is a separate thing as as something that is being cognized, and the actual thing in the world has its own separate independent existence, and therefore that is the vibhagaha iti vibhagaha. This is the distinction between the three. So even in the other example, when gauhu was being said, it could be the word, the cognitive imprint, and the actual cow. Everything is, you say gauhu, but very obviously these are three different things. That is the vibhaga that needs to be understood. And evam tat pravibhaga sanyamat yoginah sarvabhuta ritagñānam sampadyate iti. And here is the sort of greatness of the process of the yogic process, where once that vibhaga is understood, then the yogi does sanyama on it. So there is a dharana, dhyana, and a samadhi. And in those sutras, we have understood what is the difference between dharana, what is dhyana, and then what is samadhi. And how this process generates different siddhis is what we are seeing here. So once one does a sanyama on this, a yogi, he exactly narrows his focus on this vibhaga. And then there is sanyama on the vibhaga done by the yogi. Then a siddhi arises. Because we have seen the angi bhuta samadhi and then the anga bhuta samadhi. And how the anga bhuta samadhi and the angi bhuta samadhi then generates a siddhi of a samprajnanam, a complete, a profuse knowledge. So that siddhi here is sarva bhuta rata jnanam sampadyate. So the jnanam, understanding, knowledge of all means of communication, all linguistic variations, comes to the yogi through the sanyama on this pravibhaga that was just described. With this ends the bhashya on this particular sutra, and we have learnt multiple things. We have gotten a flavor of the linguistic analysis, the Vyakarana Shastra, to whatever brief extent, but whatever is relevant, and the nature of thought that we have understood. We have understood how the correspondence between language and things of the world, how that has been viewed in this tradition. And also we are understanding this whole process of yoga, which through sanyama on certain things, certain concepts, which requires a lot of depth first, just for a basic understanding, then further sanyama, then that brings about a language, a siddhi at a totally different level, which was that samprajnanam that we had referred to, a complete siddhi, a complete knowledge of that. There is a sakshatkara that happens. It simply manifests in the chitta, a total understanding comes to the yogi. And that is why this process of yoga is acknowledged not just by the yoga darshana, but all the quote unquote rival darshanas, all the various schools of Indian tradition. The yogic process, whether it is Mimamsa, whether it is Agamas, whether it is Vedanta, anywhere, the arriving at a complete direct realization and full understanding is said to always happen through the yogic process. And here in the Yoga Sutra and the Bhashya, we are being given a flavor of how this yogic process operates. And then what is this yogaja pratyaksham, or this alaukika pratyaksham that comes through yoga and sanyama.
So little more linguistic inquiry, very fascinating actually. But what you so far heard was all with a reference to language of Sanskrit. Now, for all of us, although we may not be Sanskritists or Sanskrit language speakers and Sanskrit language understanders, it happens in all languages. So it comments, this particular bhashya which Srineet started was Sarva Padeshu Asti Vakya Shakti. So, pada, shabda. The pada also has a vakya shakti. It can mean a sentence. Now, to understand this outside the scope of Sanskrit language, with which we are not, most of us not so familiar, let's use one of our languages. Say Deepaka. Deepaka means lamp. And Deepaka also is a name of a person. The first name of a person is also Deepak. So suppose we are searching in the house and somewhere we are looking in the house something and we find somewhere a lamp. And we say Deepak. What does it mean? It's a thing called lamp, Deepak. But then at the door somebody appears and we say Deepak. What does it mean? A person called Deepak has arrived. So Deepak word, when just uttered Deepak, it will have two separate meanings or statements. One is, I have found a lamp, or Deepak has arrived. So word Deepaka can explode with the meaning by merely uttering word Deepak. So to take recourse to English language, which would be might be more fascinating, white. White is a color. So something is white. That means it is not black or red or yellow or green or blue, but white. White is a color. But white also happens to be family name. So, in some reference, we just utter white. It might mean that we have found something which is of white color. But when we refer to a person, it becomes white, a name. The white has also third meaning, which is in racial discrimination condition, black and white, black people and white people. So unfortunately, the world was caught in this racial discrimination problem a couple of decades back. So white would mean a person of white race and not black race. White would mean the family name, because you have the names such as black and white. So words such as black and white could be name of a person, family name of a person. Somebody can be Mr. Black or Mrs. Black or Mr. White or Mrs. White. So that is with reference to name. Then it could be racial discrimination. Somebody is white and somebody is black. Then it can be referring to a color of an object. So even in other languages, for example, I just took one of the vernacular example of Deepak. So when you say Deepak, it has two meanings. Deepak has arrived, or you have found a Deepak, you have found a lamp. Which was not to be found, you have found it. So, or you say this is an object called lamp, and this is a person called Deepak. So in both the cases, the word is Deepak. So with reference to context, we will understand whether the word Deepak is used with reference to an object, which is lamp, or with a person who is Deepak. So also somebody may be white. Whether this is with reference to a white, a person who has a family name of white, or black, which is a family name of person, or whether it is reference to an object which is white or which is black. Object can be a white or black. A person can be a white or black. In the sense, family name. So just the word has Vakya Shakti. And you heard the example when the child says Vruksham, it means Vruksha is existing or Vruksha has been sighted. The whole sentence is conceived by the child just saying elephant. That means the child is seeing elephant or sighting elephant. So the word has Vakya Shakti. We will understand what is its meaning. So the Buddha has a Vakya Shakti. And then he gave the examples of noun and verbs, which you come across in Sanskrit language. Then another important thing was brought to our notice, pachati. Somebody is cooking. Is cooking means you imply so many things in it. That means somebody is hungry or somebody needs food. Then there is karaka, there is fire, there is a burner, etc. And then something is being cooked, such as rice. So cooking is a verb. So if somebody uses the verb cooking, utters the word cooking, it implies that somebody is hungry or somebody is needing food, and then there are some grains in the house, and there is some instrument through which it can be burned, such as fire, etc. So the words have a lot of power. And that is why the languages are formed, because the words have a lot of power and the words are not merely words. So he gives wonderful example how sometimes we are so intelligent that somebody just has to say one word and we understand what is meant by it. We understand the implications. We understand the nuances. We read what is called as between the lines. When there is nothing between the lines, we read that there is some substance between the lines, and that is a sign of intelligence, that somebody reads between the lines, while somebody doesn't read between the lines. That means lack of intelligence. So Pada Shakti has been beautifully described. That's why, as you heard, it's a mini śabdānuṣāsanam, and very interesting topic that way. So that's how we were discussing from that. And then all these three are distinct. Shabda or Shabda Artha Jnana, or Pada, Padartha and Padartha Jnana. Then also beautiful example of Bhavati. Bhavati has more than one meaning. One is love addressing someone. So it is also Bhavati. The other one is a thing existing. So the noun and the verb. The word might be the same, but somewhere it can be noun. Some words are such that they can be noun and they can be verb. Like you heard the white and black, which was used an example. So that's how the pada has a vakyartham. That is their potential. Now pada is śabdārthapratyayānāmitaretarādhyāsāt. It is made up of phonetics, sound forms, vocal sound forms. So that is how the shabda is dhvanyatmaka. It is dhvani parinama. It is sound. Artha is an object which is made up of matter, gaseous matter or solid matter or liquid matter. It will be made up of matter, combination of matters. The matter will constitute the object. The physical object is always constituted by physical matters, compound of physical matters, while the jnana, pratyaya, is altogether different. There is no physical matter in jnana. There is no phonic or sound matter in jnana. So these three are totally independent, separate. Actually, they are unmixable, but we have mix-up in our human psyche. And śabdārthapratyayānāmitaretarādhyāsāt pravibhāgah would be giving enormous power, and that is what the power here the yogi has for the siddhi mentioned here. Anyway, the point is a wonderful śabdānuṣāsanam can be found here, and it should be interesting for one to investigate into the concept of word, the concept of denotee, denoter, denotee, and the concept of perception, cognition, jnana. And all our experience depends upon the shabda artha jnana concept. Pada artha and pratyaya. So a deeper analysis will slowly expose the logic behind this seemingly miraculous power that yogi is able to understand the language of animals, creatures, etc., etc. So an interesting topic was found in the Sutra, as I said repeatedly, śabdānuṣāsanam. Okay.
Okay. So we'll stop here for today. And in the next session, we'll begin with the next sutra. Let's recite the shlokas on Guruji. Vaijñānikam pravaktritva āsaneshu kalavidam yogābhyāse ca tattvajñam vandeham sundaram gurum yoga vruksho hi lokesmin yaspreranena vardhitah yogācārya guro tubhyam sundarāya namo namaha. Thank you.
Namaskar all of you.